Hi, everyone. David Aragona and Craig Milkowski here, taking a look at one of the graded stakes on Saturday at Saratoga. This is race seven, the grade two Glen Falls, going a mile and a half on the turf course for the fillies and mares. And Craig, we've got one of the heavy hitters in the filly and mare turf division signed on in this race, the number six Warlike Goddess, who figures to be a prohibitive favorite.
She does. I see you made her 1-2 on the morning line. I would think she would be that low for sure. We haven't seen a lot of her this year after her trip in the Breeders' Cup last year. We've only seen one race at Keeneland where she didn't have to do a lot of running, to be honest. It was a really slow pace. So I'm interested to see her come back and face some better competition.
Yeah, she won both of the graded stakes going long on the turf up here last summer, the Glen Falls and the Flower Bowl. I think she'll try to repeat the same feat this year, unless their connections get a little more ambitious than that. We'll see. They've talked about that. But Craig, we've got some other runners with talent in this race, particularly the number two, Virginia Joy. Notably, she's the only runner going out for the Chad Brown stable, so perhaps that's meaningful. But it's going to be a pretty tough to beat Warlike Goddess in here.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, just on speed figures, nobody really comes particularly close to her other than Virginia Joy in one of her races, which I'm sure we're going to talk about when we look at her PPs.
Yeah, and I guess one concern if you're trying to beat the favorite might be pace. We'll take a look at the Timeform US pace projector in this race. And looking through this field, Craig, there really aren't any front runners signed on. And that's why you see that gray bar with the no speed rating. We don't see it that often in the PPs, but this feels like an appropriate situation because I don't see anybody that wants to go forward.
No, for sure. I mean, we have Key Biscayne well in front, and that's basically because she won an allowance race and at Gulfstream and off the turf on the synthetics. But on the turf, her best running style has been coming from pretty far behind, like she did in the Dick Memorial last time. So it just seems like kind of a crapshoot on the front end to see who's going to set the pace and just how slow they can go, because I don't see any way there would be a fast pace in here.
Yeah, and that number six Chicklet shown all the way towards the back of the pack is Warlike Goddess. So she's going to have to overcome probably a glacial early pace if she wins here. But she's done that in the past, Greg. And that's actually exactly what she did when she won the Bewitched Stakes in her lone start so far in 2022 at Keeneland. We'll take a look at the stretch run of that race. And she was visually impressive this day, only won by a length and three quarters. But as you check out this replay, you could see if she just got through that hole, the victory was never in doubt.
Right. I like the fight she showed that day because it wasn't easy to get through that hole, as you say. The speed figure was a 124. That was a big time pace adjustment from that one. If you use Timeform USPPs, you would see she only gets a 104 final time number. That's just how slow the pace was. It was impossible to run a representative final time number of her ability. But to me, she showed she was still in the great form she showed back in 2021. And I didn't see any reason to downgrade that performance. And as you pointed out, it showed that she can overcome a slow pace. She laid fairly close that day. There were only five horses, so being third, I'm not sure exactly what that means, but she was just a couple lengths off of it and still had that same finishing kick.
Yeah, she's just been utterly dominant in these races, going a mile and three eighths to the mile and a half in this division. And they're campaigning her pretty sparingly this year. They kind of had that planned layoff after the Bewitch, aiming towards a fall push towards the Breeders' Cup. I know there's some chatter that if she wins this race, they might try the Sword Dancer against males, since that's a grade one event. I guess it depends on what happens here, but nice to hear some confidence coming from the camp. I guess that means that she's doing well, and she's just going to be awfully tough to beat in this race. One of her main rivals could be the number two Virginia Joy, that Chad Brown runner in the field. Let's take a look at her victory too, back when she won the Sheep's Head Bay at Belmont. And Craig, she really did get the kind of trip that you needed over this boggy turf course, because it seemed like the horses that got in front just kept going and widening their advantage.
She won this race by about a football field. I think it was almost 15 lengths in the end. And I do think the course had a lot to do with that. It was yielding course way down on the Timeform US track scale. I think it was a five that day. And this was a race I was talking about where she ran that 123 speed figure, which is the one figure she has that's comparable with Warlike Goddess. but it's really hard for me to see her repeating that. That's kind of why I have it X'd out on that graphic. If you ignore that race, she's just a horse who's consistently 5 or 6 lengths slower than Warlike Goddess. So for me, it would be a pretty big leap for her to beat her. And I even want to take a shot against her in second, as we'll see, because I think there are some others with similar ability.
Some other horses that could be considered contenders in this race are coming out of a common event, the Robert G. Dick Memorial at Delaware Park. Let's take a look at the stretch run of that race. Big upset winner of this race, Craig, as Key Biscayne got the job done at 36 to 1. Not really sure where this performance came from because her other turf races don't quite measure up to this level, but I think the turf condition had a lot to do with the wacky results of this race.
I would totally agree with that. It was another boggy turf course. This one was only a 4, I believe, on the Timeform US scale. There was a fast pace. They obviously went way too fast for that course. You will see it in her PPs with all the red highlighted fractions. And I just think it was kind of a fluke. And even given those things, she's never run a race remotely close enough to the others in here.
Yeah, the other runner coming out of that race is Temple City Terror, and she's the one who really didn't run well as the 2-1 favorite, but perhaps just really hated that soft going last time. Her prior form is pretty consistent. She's run well going these longer distances. She was just no match for Warlike Goddess in this same race last year, Craig, so she's going to have to improve to turn the tables.
Right, for sure. And she's one that she's always getting a fast pace. So I'm not sure how she would handle the slow pace. The reason I started with her is I do think that Dick Memorial is just a total line out for her. She did no running whatsoever, didn't seem to handle the course. And she's one, if she looks at her speed figures, she looks just as good as Virginia Joy to me. So I'm looking for some kind of rebound, assuming we don't get big storms, which I don't think are predicted and the course is firm as it has been. I expect her to revert back to her previous running lines.
A runner that I think is a little interesting in this race is the other Bill Mott runner, the number 3 Petrichor. Let's take a look at her last race at Laurel in the Big Dreyfus. And she finishes in mid pack in this race back in fifth, but she really had a tough trip. I mean, we're going to show the stretch drive, but you could watch the whole thing if you want to. I mean, she was just kind of in a difficult position the entire way, got shuffled back on the far turn after trying to move up. And you can see here Victor Carrasco trying to negotiate his way through traffic, but just can't ever seem to find a clear path, just altering course multiple times. Horses kind of swerving in front of her, just can't ever really find anywhere to go. And she finishes fifth here. It's unclear if she would have won that race if she had gotten through. The trouble did start much further back than at the quarter pole where we started that replay. But I just think she's a horse, Craig, that is a little interesting on the stretch out because she came over to this country still underexposed, only having run 4 times over in France. And now she's been with Phil Mott for 3 starts, won her debut in this country the right way, and then just maybe not in the right situations the last couple of times.
Yeah, she's a runner who had been improving every time. And unlike most of the contenders in here, she's still a 4-year-old. So there should be plenty of upside with her. Her speed figures do look to have taken a little dip last time. But I think it's very reasonable, as you pointed out, that she wasn't able to produce her best form because of the trip that she had. So I like what I saw from her. I've got no problems with her. So if you're looking for a horse that's going to advance, I went in a little different direction, but I can see it. She sure looks like one who will appreciate the added ground.
Yeah, and that's the big reason that I'm kind of taking a positive view of her is that added ground. Because if you look at her pedigree on the dam side, she's by a Dancilly Dam, who is a half sister to Brian Baru, who won the St. Leger Stakes in England, going 1.75 miles, as well as Sea Moon, who was second in the Breeders' Cup Turf, a multiple stakes winner going 1.5 miles in Europe. So this is just a stamina laden pedigree on the bottom side, and she's finally getting a chance to stretch out to a marathon distance. One more horse who's not going to mind the distance, Craig, is the number 4, Flanagan's Cove, going out for Shug McGahee. It could just be a problem of class with her because she's never faced runners this good.
She clearly is going to like the distance. I mean, she even as a 3-year-old, she was running a mile and a 3/16 and a mile and a quarter. So it seems like Shug McGahee kind of it was telling us she's a distance horse. She hasn't quite been to this class, but I do like it as almost the same thing as with Petrichor that she is still a 4-year-old. So particularly on turf, I still think there's some upside. So I think she has a shot to at least hit the board in this spot.
Let's throw up our picks for this race. And Craig, I mean, you put Warlike Goddess on top. I almost did, and I probably should have because I do think that she is the most likely winner of this race. But when I've got an opinion on a long shot, I just like to flip flop them and highlight that top pick by making it a price horse. So I'm a little interested in Petrichor. I think she's going to run well in this race. I have confidence that she can complete the exact. I'll just put her on top to highlight a price.
Yeah, there's no problem with that whatsoever. If you're gonna beat a favorite, you might, especially a favorite as heavy as we're looking at, you may as well get paid. My strategy will be more to play the vertical bets and probably fade Virginia Joy some and try to get Temple City Terror and Flanagan's Cove in the exacta and trifecta.
Yeah, I've got no problem with that strategy. I do think Virginia Joy is the vulnerable one of the short prices of these races. So we'll see how that plays out in the Grade 2 Glen Falls on Saturday at Saratoga. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend, everybody.